Hey everybody, hope you are doing well. Sorry that this video is not in my office. I had a microphone malfunction, and so the video, I had to record the video because I couldn't find the original one, so the microphone is uh, broken, so I'm having a technical difficulty. So bear with me with regards to the sound quality of this video, but I am delighted to move on in our series about the existence of God. And so today what we're going to look at is we're going to look at something called the teleological argument, often known as the fine-tuning argument. And the fine-tuning argument is a more sophisticated version of the classical argument for God from design. And so one of the things that can sometimes get mixed up as we talk about fine-tuning arguments, sometimes people equate fine-tuning with design, and so therefore they say, oh, well, you're just equivocating fine-tuning for design. That's not what I mean at all. So what I mean by fine-tuning is that the universe's fundamental constants and quantities, these things, those are the physical values of universal and unchanging foundations. The universe, I guess the way that I would say it is that they're universal and unchanging. They form the foundation of the laws of physics. Okay, so these constants and quantities, they appear in equations that govern various physical phenomena like gravity or quantum mechanics. And so these things are fine-tuned in the sense that they fall into a very narrow range for the existence of life in a way that is highly unlikely to have occurred by chance or necessity. And so the only thing left to think about, or the one thing that we would consider, or the one thing that this suggests, however you want to phrase it, is that there is an intelligent designer. And so that is the essence or the overview of the argument. Now, what we want to do here is we're going to break the argument down into syllogisms, as we have before in previous classes. Once again, the fine-tuning argument is going to have a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. And as with every deductive argument, if the major and the minor premise are true, then the conclusion follows. It is unget-aroundable, as they say. So, and what's cool about the teleological argument or the fine-tuning argument is that each premise builds on scientific observation, that the universe appears to be structured in a way that is conducive to the existence of life, despite what seems to be the improbability of such conditions. And so what we will do is we will walk through this argument and try to show that the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned is due to design. So let's go ahead and jump right into the premises. Premise one, the fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. So the first premise sets up this what's called a trilemma by positing that fine-tuning of the universe can be explained by one of three options: physical necessity, chance, or design. So here, once again, I'm going to drive this home in this particular video, is that fine-tuning refers to the idea that the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe fall within this narrow range that allows for the existence of life. Now, if these values were even slightly off, life, as we know it, would be impossible. So, now, the thing about this is that these three options are, seems to be, they are exhaustive and mutually exclusive. And what do I mean by that? That the explanation must be that either the constants are the way that they are out of necessity, necessity meaning they couldn't be otherwise, or that they're the result of chance, like hitting the lottery, or they are designed by an intelligent mind. And so These three options are structured for a particular reason. Their intent, the intent of this structure, is to clarify that we're not missing any plausible explanations, which is crucial because it allows us to be equal and fair, but also it'll be crucial for coming to the conclusion that the design is the best possible answer. So now this premise doesn't go without objection. Some people object that this trilemma might be too restrictive. Some critics argue that, well, there might be some unknown process or explanation that we've yet to consider or account for the fine tuning of the universe. But the problem with that is that without positive evidence for unknown mechanisms, there's no reason to add a fourth category. Now, one of the things that we could press objectors to premise one on would be, well, if you think there's another category that needs to be presented, well, by all means, go ahead and present that category. So this approach that we're looking at with premise one relies heavily on scientific and philosophical principles, and so we utilize those so that we can conclude, make our conclusions based on the best available data, rather than speculating on unsupported possibilities. All right. The other objection when it comes to premise one is that this argument begs the question because it supposedly rules out natural explanations from the outset. I mean, that's not a common one that I hear, but it is one that I hear. But the problem with that is that this trilemma includes naturalistic explanations like necessity and chance, and gives them equal consideration when talking about, well, why is the universe fine-tuned? And so by allowing these possibilities in the first premise, we set up, like I said before, a fair examination rather than just simply preemptively dismissing and saying, no, it has to be design. We don't want to run into the look at the trees fallacy. So let's go ahead and look at the second premise, which is that the fine-tuning of the universe is not due to physical necessity or chance. So there's really a twofold defense here. First is that we want to argue that fine-tuning is unlikely to be the result of physical necessity, and second, it's implausible to attribute it to chance. So let's just look at rejecting physical necessity here. So one of the things that we want to argue here, or that I would argue here, is that there's no known physical reason why the constants and quantities of the universe must have the value that they do. There's nothing in the law of physics that requires, for instance, the gravitational constant or the cosmological constant to be exactly the way that they are. Rather, these values could theoretically differ without contradicting fundamental principles, right? So it's really difficult to assert that the universe is fine-tuned due to necessity. I mean, you could essentially run cosmological models that change these constants and quantities as well. Now, there is some say that the theory of everything might be one way to show that these constants are necessarily the way that they are. For some unknown reason, but I would say that there's really currently no evidence for that particular theory, and even if one were to deploy that, or if it were developed, it seems speculative to assume that it would explain why constants must have life-permitting values rather than some other possible configuration. All right, so necessity seems to be out of the picture because there's no, it doesn't seem like there's any good reason as to why they couldn't be some other value. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to look at the rejection of chance. And so here, this is definitely what I would say is the hardest objection to overcome for the fine-tuning argument. But I still think that it's implausible. So I think when you look at, chance, you could look at, you have to ask yourself, could these life-permitting conditions arise by pure luck? And so we could set up analogies that talk about, why that would be implausible. For instance, the lottery is one that's often used to say, oh, well, we just hit the cosmic lottery. But the thing that makes the lottery implausible is the fact that there are so many players involved. And one of the things that you could say to that is like, well, what happens if you only have, one ticket and one winning number, or something to that effect? You could say something to the effect of, let's say you were on a firing line because you're going to be executed, and you lined up, and it was just you and 10 other riflemen that were aimed in on you, and they put the blindfold on you and they said, ready, aim, fire, and you heard the guns go off, and then what happened? You're still alive. Well, it's possible that all those guys were just really bad shots, or you could say, well, it seems like somebody set this up to take place. Well, the same thing would be true with the fine-tuning of the universe. There's only one cosmic lottery. There's not a multitude of cosmic lotteries, and so it's just highly improbable based upon the cosmological constants and quantities. These things just happen by chance. One of the things that's often used to say that chance is the best candidate is the multiverse hypothesis. And so what that does is that there's a countless number of other universes, each with different constants, and so in that case, it's not surprising that one of them, ours, would have life-permitting universes. But here's the thing about that: in highlighting the multiverse as an explanation, the multiverse itself would still need fine-tuning to permit a life-permitting universe with sufficient frequency. So I think this just pushes the problem back to, well, if the multiverse theory, which is once again speculative and lacks empirical support, the question here is, well, what accounts for the fine-tuning of the multiverse as well? So yeah, that's one thing that we could do. And looking at this, no, don't hear me say that the multiverse isn't a logical possibility. I mean, I think it currently lacks empirical grounding, but it would also have to have its own fine-tuning, right? By invoking it, it just pushes the problem back. Why would the multiverse generator, be so precisely calibrated to create a life-permitting universe, right? So that's kind of a defense of premise 2. With regards to chance and necessity, premise 3 is, therefore, the fine-tuning of the universe is due to design. And so, as we've seen, like in looking at the rejection of both physical necessity and chance as adequate explanations, we conclude that design is the most plausible remaining option. And so all the design hypothesis says is that there's an intelligent cause behind the fine-tuning of the universe's constants and quantities. And so this is an inference to the best explanation, something that we do all of the time. It's not a direct proof of design. It appeals to the idea that design is the best accounting for what is observed in the universe, namely its fine-tuning. And so the other thing about this is that it coincides with our own experience. We're able to recognize design as an explanation in other situations and circumstances, particularly when we encounter systems that exhibit high degrees of complexity and purpose. So, by analogy, the fine-tuning of the universe for life suggests an intelligent designer in a similar way that an intricate function of a watch implies a watchmaker, as Paley talked about a while ago. Now, there are some significant objections to the design argument. One of the things that you'll ask, or that people will ask, is, okay, well, who designed the designer? That's a critique which challenges the argument by suggesting that there is that positing a designer only shifts the problem back rather than solving it. And so, one of the things that we could say to this is that by arguing that there's a designer, and saying, well, what about God? Who designed God? Well, that's a categorical fallacy, because by definition, God's a necessary being, and he doesn't require an external cause. And so the objection here misses the point, right? The explanations can be valid without needing to explain the origin of the explainer. For instance, scientists accept gravity as an explanation for things like planetary motion without needing to explain gravity's own origin at each step, right? Another objection is that this commits the God of the gaps fallacy, where gaps in scientific knowledge are filled with supernatural explanations. I would say that the inference to design is not based on ignorance, like God of the gaps claims. It's not based on ignorance, but rather it's based on positive evidence that we see for, or positive evidence of, fine-tuning. And so it just follows from a process of elimination that intelligence is, an intelligent designer is the best explanation, rather than simply filling in a gap of our knowledge based upon what we don't know about the universe. So critics also, what they'll do is they'll question whether fine-tuning truly implies design, or if it could be an artificial or artifact of human perception and the tendency to describe purpose to patterns. And so one of the things that we could say to this, we could push back on this and just say, well, fine-tuning is not just simply an illusion, but it's a well-documented feature of the universe that allows us and is acknowledged across all sorts of disciplines, and it remains highly unlikely to have occurred naturally without some underlying cause. So what we want to say in conclusion is that the teleological argument for God's existence through fine-tuning of the universe presents what I believe to be a rigorous defense of design as the best explanation for the precise constants that allow life to exist. And so by systematically rejecting physical necessity or chance as explanation, we can argue that design is the most plausible option on the table, and conclude that there's an intelligent designer who is responsible for the universe's life-permitting conditions. Now, certainly the argument has its critics, has its objections, which are very strong objections, I'll admit that, but I think what you can show, just based on in talking with people about this, is that there really is a strong philosophical foundation and willingness on the parts of Christians to engage with alternatives, with alternative explanations, and seek to show that those alternative explanations don't really solve the problem. They kind of push the problem back, like the multiverse hypothesis. So Fine-tuning argument remains one of the most discussed, obviously, and robust versions of the teleological argument. That's fine-tuning, and I think it does highlight a complex and compelling case for the existence of a designer based upon the structure of the universe. And so, this is really one of the classic arguments that has shaped a lot of atheists who have turned to Christianity or turned to God. The late Christopher Hitchens, who died an atheist, actually said the number one argument that gave him the most problem was the fine-tuning argument. And so, as you engage with this, as you understand this, make sure that it's one of those things that you utilize to deploy as you have conversations with people about the existence of God. So, thank you for being here in class once again. I'm enjoying you guys and your writing and your responses. Keep those coming, and have a great day. God bless.